What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to give you guys my full review on Mafia: The Old Country. Beat the game, beat it in just under 10 hours, didn't rush it, feel very, very good about this. Just want to say that early on because, you might get a comment or two saying, oh my God, you already beat it, maybe you rushed through it. No. I took my time, and I got to tell you guys right here, right now, I think this might be my favorite Mafia of all time. I say this often. We talk about reviews, right? I talk about the review scores. I talk about what people say because I want to know what they're actually saying. But I've said this for years on this channel. Don't go based off scores. You see a 75 and you say, oh, my benchmark's an 80. Please don't do that because let me tell you something right now. This is one of my favorite games of the year, period. This is a top 5 game that I've played so far this year. I think it is phenomenal. Are there issues? Of course. Pretty much any game has issues, and I'll go over them in this video. But if you're looking for that linear story, and saying it out loud, you don't really, it's tough. You say it's a linear story. I feel like that almost discredits it. That almost doesn't give it what it deserves, which is this is a magnificent world. This is a beautiful, that doesn't always run great. I'll throw that in, okay? We'll talk about the negatives maybe a little bit after this cold open. It's a beautiful game. It is such a well-written game. Things have consequences. There feels like there's weight here. There feels like there's proper pacing, as opposed to, I will say, my favorites, Mafia 1 and 2, has some pacing issues, has kind of the rise and fall of Tommy and Vito and Joe. It has a little bit of pacing problems in how they rise to power and how things kind of fall apart. And I will tell you right now, and this is, I just finished it, okay? I'm hitting record pretty soon after. Could be a biasness. The pacing and the weight of this game feels so purposeful. It feels like everything has a meaning to why it's there. It feels like this journey of Enzo going from a minor to all of a sudden, he's a well-trusted part of this family that all feels deserved. And then what happens also feels, okay, this is building, but it doesn't skip. It doesn't go like, okay, here we're going to skip 5 years and just kind of go past all the good stuff. Such great characters, such great chemistry, amazing cutscenes, again, a beautiful game. And may I say, let's talk about the gameplay too in part of this cold open. I liked it. I don't think it's revolutionary. It is so much in line with Mafia, I would say, 1 Definitive Edition and Mafia 3. If you're fine with how a shotgun feels, if you're fine with how a rifle feels, if you're fine with how a pistol feels, nothing has changed. And I'm not going to say the combat's amazing, but is it rock solid? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I think this game has that diversity that if you've been watching my videos leading in, I talked about what makes these games at their best, okay, like Mafia 1, 2, 3, the mission structure is how they do it is, okay, you're going to do a car chase. Then all of a sudden you're going to just be talking to people. It's like an investigation mission. And now all of a sudden it's going to be this or going to be that. That's what keeps the games going. That's what keeps, relatively, solid but pretty flat gameplay. That's what keeps it going is, okay, well, you're not going to be shooting people every single time. May I just say, as a slight spoiler, but not really, I don't think you fire a gun until 2 to 3 hours into this game. You don't even have your first gunfight till hours and hours in, and I love that because for so much of this game, and I would say, it definitely heats up at the end. You are gunfighting much, much more often towards the end of this game. But I would say for, that 2 hours in to maybe like the 8-hour in point, it feels, again, purposeful. You're not going to be fighting every 5 minutes. So that stale gameplay that you might think it is, even if it is, it's not used actually all that much because I think they know, okay, we got to keep you bouncing around. So that was an incredibly long cold open, but I just really want to stress just how good of a game this is, how much I love it. One of my favorite games of this year. And man, oh man, please do not go by that 70s. I don't give scores. I'm not planning on it. I'm not planning on giving one to the Old Country, but this is not a 7.6. Okay, this is easily high 8s, if I actually had to say something. No, I mean, it's a great game. Okay, let's talk a little bit. I mean, we just kind of showered it with love. I want to talk about a couple of the negatives and we'll kind of go back and forth. So one of the negatives is the performance. The thing is, the world looks so beautiful, okay? The engine is great, and visually, I mean, some of the vistas, and I feel like they were showing off kind of early on in the game, a lot of the set pieces in this game feel like they're designed off the technology. So I don't really want to give away like the last hour or two, but let's just say like when you're outside, there's a reason you're outside. Things are going on. They kind of want you to look. I mean, when you go to the port, when you go to all of these cities, when you're at like the main villa, if you're just looking at those mountains and you're driving, I mean, it is a beautiful, beautiful game. One of the prettiest games you'll ever see. The facial capture, you know, in terms of the actors and stuff, so good. Okay, that's a lot of positives. Now, the negatives, there's something with these games. I think Unreal Engine 5, right, is what this is made in. There's something about them that sometimes hurts my eyes. Maybe I'm just getting older. Maybe I need glasses. But there's sometimes where it's almost like I found the brightness to be something that was kind of weird. The sound, you know, I yell. I don't know if you guys can tell that, you know, from these videos, but I actually inadvertently, I don't really mean to, I yell like when I'm yelling into this mic. These characters have all different, you know, frequencies and all different volumes. So you could be in a car. And I mean, yes, like cars are loud, so maybe some of them, but some of them sound like they're echoing down a hallway. And some of them, like, I remember early on in this game, maybe it's Isabella, Enzo, and Cesare. There's like 3 or 4 of them, and one of them sounds like, I think it was Isabella, sounds like she's echoing. Like, it doesn't sound like she's literally next to you, talking to you. So some of the sound, especially when you're driving and when you're directly next to somebody, I found that actually towards the beginning too. It would always sound like one character's talking at like a normal volume, and then one is talking like 10 below, which actually makes the other person sound like they're too loud. So that was one thing. There is definitely some frame rate stuff. I found if you push your vehicle to the max, okay, you have fun. I mean, it's an interesting control, you know, scheme to race with these cars. But if you're gonna do that, be prepared for like the game to not really be able to handle it. Sometimes if you're driving at a very fast speed and say you jump over something, the game is not going to be able to hang with you in terms of that frame rate. So, you know, and this is a tough thing because I'll be honest. I mean, I'd rather performance versus visuals. Always and forever. I don't think there's actually another way around it. This game, honestly, is the reverse. This game wants it to be one of the most beautiful games you'll ever see, and it is, but sometimes you push that just a little bit too far, and then the game can't handle it. Now, I would prefer that the game is just always running silky smooth, and then you lose a little bit of, you know, how good it looks because of that. That's not how this game is. So that would be, you know, one weakness that is noticeable. Like throughout the whole game, you're going to notice that the game can sometimes chug and is not always going to be following you the way that you want to. I would say another thing is this game is so linear, and I like it. I like it for that. There's a little bit of exploration that you could do here and there, okay? But one thing is, like, there's upgrades, there's different knives you can buy, there's different, you know, you can go in and exchange your guns here. There's a store kind of down the street you can go to, and I bought 2 things like the entire game. I got a new knife that at some point had like 6 durability, which was fine. Like I didn't even use the knife. I would always sneak up and just like choke them out, just because I wanted to keep that knife available if I needed it. Okay, so I never really used the knife. I never bought anything. I bought maybe one horse, I think, for sure, and I bought maybe like one trim or one like thing for the horse, but that was it. So again, in terms of like the weakness, I feel like the game gives you these options, and it even tells you in the beginning, like, well, first couple hours, okay, like this person at this shop, they're gonna be here if you ever want to stop in, you know, you can trade stuff. You never need to. I'm not amazing, but I think I'm very, very good. You might see in this gameplay, like I'll miss some shots, but I'm aiming for the head 10 out of 10 times. And if I take a person out, it's a headshot. Like also maybe 99 out of 100 times, it's a headshot. And you're always finding ammo. You're always finding bandages. You're finding everything in the missions themselves. You never have to explore. You never have to buy anything. So, you know, is it a negative? Well, you know, it's in the game, and I feel like, honestly, there was no purpose to it whatsoever. I don't think it changed the gaming experience by me not experiencing that. You know, like I don't think I would have been vastly different in my play style if I did any of that stuff. I was doing just fine without it. I would guess say, when we're talking about gameplay here, the cars are interesting. I mean, I kind of like it. I kind of like the feel. It reminds me of Mafia 1, to be honest, but even harder. There's some races in this game that are very, very interesting. Look, not my favorite. Whenever there's chase scenes or stuff like that, it always feels a little odd because you're trying to get really close. And sometimes, without spoiling it, there are some chases in this game that are ended by like events. Like you don't even do it. You just have to stay close. And then all of a sudden, maybe a car crashes into another car and that's what stops the chase. You're not even catching up to them half the time. I mean that too. Like maybe half the time you do catch up and you actually are able to shoot, or you maybe saw like that Uncharted like sequence in the gameplay leading in where you're like on a car and you jump to a horse. That's a really cool scene, but that's like you maybe do that 2 or 3 times in terms of catching up. The other times you're just kind of like in the vicinity and then something happens. So, the vehicles or whatever, I would, the AI is kind of a mix. Like I'm not going to say they're good. I'm not going to say they're bad. They'll have like the same place. In fact, I feel like the AI is kind of on like a meter where you'll have 2 enemies and they'll pop up and go back the exact same time. And they'll do the exact same animation and they're right in front of each other. So it almost looks like they're clones. Does that make sense? Like the AI feels like they're clones of each other when they're fighting you. They'll charge right at you sometimes and they're very easy targets. The one thing that I didn't exploit but I noticed towards the end that I actually kind of really liked, if you stay still and you don't fire, and they're firing at you, say, but they don't throw anything, okay? Eventually, they'll shout out, hey, we should make sure he's still there, and they'll move their positions. Because most times, again, the AIs, whatever, like their head will be hanging out when they're in cover when they probably shouldn't be. They have a very repetitive pop-in, pop-out structure. That's the one time that I thought, okay, that's kind of cool, because honestly, I never did that. For most of the game, I was popping in and out. I was shooting, so I was always in the enemy's like radar. But towards the end of the game, and again, I won't tell you why, I was trying to be a bit more careful, take my shots a little bit better, and so there would be times I wouldn't shoot, and then that's when I would hear, hey, let's make sure he's still there. And I would say, oh my god, like that's pretty cool, and they'll move. Like it's actually kind of scary because it's so stiff that if they do charge at you, especially like both sides of you, you're going to get killed. It only takes like 2-3 shots to die, and you can't shoot both sides, at the same time. So kind of cool, again, kind of messy. That's really it. I mean, look, the story I think is phenomenal. I really do. I mentioned Cesare, mentioned Isabella. I mean, the Isabella Enzo thing is freaking phenomenal. So good. I mean, like Don Teresi is very scary. He's the uncle to Cesare, and he just seems like that very like Italian, uncle that's like very in control. He talks very like systematically, and he's got like this speech pattern and tone that just makes him like terrifying, but also like he's like a classic mob boss where you could like you imagine him being in the Godfather movie, something like that. But I mean, like Tino, Luca, oh my god, so freaking good. And what they do, it's tough because there's so much that happens, and like I said, I mean, there is one negative with the story, I would say, and it's like the reluctance to do something. I'll say that in terms of non-spoilers. The reluctance of Enzo to say or do something for most of the game was kind of getting on my nerves, but you do kind of realize towards the, like they do actually say stuff that makes me think, oh, okay, it actually wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered. So I really like the twists and turns. In those reviews leading into this game, we heard how it was a very like by the books like experience. Like there's going to be those tropes and those cliches and stuff. I mean, maybe. Like, there were a few things I saw coming, including, I would say, probably the major stuff, but, well, not all the major stuff. It's really tough because okay, let me just say this in terms of non-spoiler, all right? I mentioned it in that cold open. What I love so much thinking about it just like 10 minutes after beating it, I love the rise, okay? I mentioned that with Tommy and all of that. I think Enzo's rise is so well done because, and I like Mafia 1 and 2 so much. In fact, I would probably say love. But they do that interesting thing, especially 2, where they do those like montages, if you guys remember that, when like Vito and Joe are selling things. And it goes really, really fast. And Tommy has a similar thing as well, and especially time skips. And this game does it too. There's a couple year time skips. But I mean, I feel like the missions they put you on are very, again, purposeful, where you feel like, okay, this is how Enzo Enzo is gaining that next step up. Okay, this defines him for this year or these missions. I can understand why the Don would move him up and why he would get a little bit more powerful because he just did this mission. And it's very purposeful. And honestly, the skips don't really serve as that at all. In my headcanon, those skips are just like general things are happening. Versus in Mafia 1 and 2, those skips are the rise and sometimes fall of these characters. In this game, the rise and fall is not, they don't do as many tasks. Enzo is not selling things for 2 years to do something, right? But he does, okay, maybe 2 or 3 things. Those are missions. Those are high quality, like, okay, I get after he does this thing and saves Isabella, in the first kind of third of the game. You can understand how that would actually help him out, right? And it's like, you get that. Then when they do the time skip, it's like, they're just like going for money. They're just doing kind of small time tasks. It's not what defines these characters. Again, there's a lot that defines Mafia 1 and 2. I'm not trying to like put those games down. I don't know. I feel like, again, the way that reviews were talking about like the structure and stuff, I love the structure. I think the structure should be studied, to be honest with you, in this game because things feel very purposeful. I like how they did it. It doesn't feel forced, these kind of twists and turns that are happening. And this growth and change in Enzo. And that's where we get to like things that I don't think we can say in the review. Let me just say that I love the way that they do it. I love how Enzo's character goes. I love some of like the, can you kind of define yourself? Can you change as a person? Can other people view you differently? Or, the boxes we kind of put ourselves in. There's some really nice themes that are hinted at throughout the entire game. In fact, sometimes they're outright said that will catch up to these characters, towards the end. But I think they just did such a phenomenal job with the story, with the characters. They're all standouts. Like they all, I feel like, as a cast, I feel like this should be nominated for something. I mean, best cast, ideally. I just feel Isabella, Luca, Cesare, Enzo, Don, all of these characters, they deserve to be on some like ensemble list. It's a really good year for that. We had Expedition 33, which was like a 10 out of 10 in terms of that overall cast as well. I don't know if this is as good. I have maybe a personal preference there, but this cast is so phenomenal. So again, some things are tough to say without spoiling it. I love the story. The ending I kind of sat there in silence a little bit, and I can't really go more into detail, but it definitely hit me. The ending definitely got me, and I kind of saw some of it coming. I didn't see other parts of it coming, but it was a ride. And let me just end it off by saying this. Like, this is my bread and butter, okay? I grew up, 2009, I've told the story so much with, like, PS3 era, getting into it late, and, like, the Uncharted's, okay? Uncharted's, like, defined that era for me. But, like, all of those games in, like, the 07 to 2012 range, some of my favorite games are these very linear and just such high-quality 10-hour games. You don't need to have 30, 40, 50 hours. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now that this game is 30 times better than Mafia 3. I don't care that Mafia 3 is 4 times the length. This game is better in probably every single way. And this game is just 10 hours of quality stuff. If you're looking at something at one point, that's quality. If you're doing a cutscene, that's quality. If it's building something, character or story related, that's quality. And honestly, it keeps you jumping with missions too. It's got the races, it's got the chases, it's got, gunfights, it's got huge, I mentioned with Mafia 1 and 2, like the plane chase in 1 or 2 when you blow up the window, the window cleaners. This game has a couple of those. This game has maybe 3 or 4 where, and I'll just say, one's an opera house, and I love that mission. Love it. And I thought I would, as soon as they said we're going to an opera house, I said, oh, this is going to be one of the defining missions, of the game. But there's a couple times where it's like, all right, the scenery mixed with like and it feels a little bit like Uncharted, to be honest. When people were saying, hey, does this have that vibe? I don't think I should ever compare this game to Uncharted, but there's some chases. There's some things with like wide open areas where there's like spontaneous events that happen that really are pre-planned by the developers, right? You're going to walk and a bridge is going to collapse and you're going to have to jump and do this. That's an Uncharted formula, 101, and they perfected it. But I think this game has that, and this game has a couple of those sequences that when you beat the game, you'll say, okay, I can isolate a couple times this game was just like a 10 out of 10. So I loved it. I really, really absolutely loved it. One of my favorite games of the year. I will make a separate video, by the way. I just want to talk about the spoilers. So I'm going to do that in a whole different video. If you guys want to join me for that as well, we can talk there. Let me know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.